Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.
Better be bad. It's a summertime tradition at the amusement park, and every year they seem to crank it up a notch. The thrills get bigger, the chills scarier. But what about the risks? Maybe you assume the rides are always inspected and regulated to make sure there's no real danger. Well, think again. Here's Keith Morrison with a Dateline investigation.
This has become America's golden age of manufactured excitement. Never before have so many people drawn so many G's. So high, so fast, so often. For a great many people, the latest jangling attraction is the perfect combination of apparent risk, giddy thrill, and no danger at all. Or almost no danger. In fact, industry experts say you're more likely to win the lottery twice than be hurt on a roller coaster. But by the end of last summer, the summer of '99, the thrill had an extra edge of something like fear. In one terrible week last summer, 4 people were killed in amusement park accidents. Over the course of the summer, a total of 6 were killed in California, New York, New Jersey, Virginia, and Texas. There were accidents in big tourist parks and small traveling carnivals. And the government accounting revealed that during the previous 5 years, there had been a 24% increase in reported accidents and an 87% increase in emergency room visits. That's why, even though the odds of being hurt on an amusement park ride are very long, it is perhaps not surprising that some people have begun to ask if this is an industry in need of tighter regulation. Critics charge that the inspection rules at permanent parks and traveling carnivals are haphazard at best. Are people at greater risk than they need to be? You're about to meet a wild character who might help answer that question. Its name? Himalaya 8847. One of hundreds of rides just like it to travel by train and truck to carnivals around the country. But this Himalaya, number 8847, is one George Lane will never forget. And here's why.
The carnival was always there. You know, I mean, we tried to go faithfully every year.
2 years ago in March, with spring break coming to an end, George's kids, high school sophomore Leslie Lane, her brother Tyler, and a friend, were anxious to make it to the Travis County Fairgrounds before dark to ride their favorite ride, the Himalaya.
They got on it and it started, and I had walked around the corner to get me something to drink. I walked back around and I started trying to find them.
He relives that moment again and again, of course, because what would happen next changed his whole life, changed everything.
I saw them come by one time, and the next time they came by, she had started to come out of the car. Never made it around again. She came out right after that.
Hit the wall.
Hit the wall.
It was a thudding noise coming from 8847. Witnesses said it sounded like a gunshot. All 3 were ejected from their seat. Tyler and the friend were battered, but not seriously injured. But Leslie took the brunt of it. As shown here in this animated recreation prepared by the Lane family's attorneys, 8847 centrifugal force threw the 3 children out of the car and into a retaining wall. Leslie landed on the metal walkway, blood streaming from her nose and mouth. At her side, the metal lap bar that was supposed to keep her safe.
The people all jumped off and ran, screaming.
It's just your worst nightmare.
Yes.
George tried to attend to Leslie and comfort Tyler. The ambulance came. George called Leslie's mother, who had stayed home that night.
I wasn't feeling well, and they'd been gone, I guess, about an hour, hour and a half, and I got the phone call to go to the hospital.
Leslie's mother was numb as she drove to the hospital.
That was the hardest thing I've ever done, is to have to tell her that we didn't have Leslie anymore.
I mean, you never think your child's gonna die before you do.
Through the haze of pain and loss, George Lane searched for answers, and what he found was in equal parts shocking and confusing. While Leslie was riding 8847, government inspectors found that the lap bar holding her in had become detached from 2 critical points, as well as from an additional locking mechanism. And when the impounded Himalaya was tested days after the accident, pieces of the lap bars came flying off on 3 different occasions. Why wouldn't that have been noticed before the accident? Well, George discovered, it was. Just an hour before Leslie was killed, 3 riders had complained to the operator that the lap bar in another car they had been riding in had broken off. When George went to find out how this could be, he discovered there are no national rules governing amusement parks, and that state laws are a confusing patchwork.
I was amazed. There's a lot of industries out there that would like to be in their shape and not have any kind of government regulations to follow.
By now, George was on a crusade. He learned that even though rides in Texas carnivals are not required to pass daily inspections, Himalaya 8847 had passed an inspection, had been deemed fit for operation the very day his daughter was killed. What was it, he wondered, about this ride? And then he discovered it had a past.
In the case of this particular ride, this Himalaya ride, it had had problems before?
Yes, that's what we found out in California. They'd had some problems there. One lady was injured there.
The very same ride that killed Leslie Lane was the last stop for a roller coaster with a history of safety problems dating back at least 7 years.
I remember making the comment, this ride's going to kill somebody someday.
Early in the evening of February 1st, 1991, Karen Boyles and her friend Amy Palomino went out looking for fun at the Imperial Valley Fairgrounds in El Centro, California. They climbed aboard Himalaya 8847. Amy took the outside seat for a bigger thrill, and the ride picked up speed.
It was like someone just picked her up and took her right out of the car. It wasn't even slow motion, it was just, she was gone.
Through a ride? Like a slingshot?
She was laying in a pool of blood around her head.
The lap bar had failed. Karen Boyles dislocated a knee, shoulder, and jaw, sprained a wrist and an elbow, and a blood clot on the front of her brain caused what she says is permanent night blindness. But her friend, Amy Palomino, suffered far more. Even after she recovered, her left arm remained paralyzed. She couldn't work. Could she have recovered? Perhaps. But friends and family blamed the accident for the depression and drinking that resulted in liver failure.
So what happened?
Now she's an alcoholic, and she's dying.
Soon after we spoke to Karen, her friend Amy Palomino passed away. She was 30 years old. But what about Himalaya 8847? Just 2 days after the California incident, the ride cleared its next safety inspection and was back up and running at the California Midwinter Fair. Over the course of 7 years, it crisscrossed the state along the Western Carnival circuit without any serious injuries. But 8847 did pick up safety violations, many involving the lap bar. July 1991, Costa Mesa, California. May 1992, Costa Mesa again. February 93, El Centro, California. February 94, Indio, California. September 94, Tulare, California. August 97, San Mateo, California. October 97, Paris, California. The California Safety Board says some of the repairs were made, but problems kept cropping up, and eventually the state had enough of Himalaya 8847 when it was discovered that a critical power switch wasn't working. In February 1998, government officials physically went to a Del Mar, California carnival to shut the ride down for good. But when they arrived at the fairgrounds, the Himalaya was gone. Because laws on carnival rides differ from state to state, a stop order issued in California would not necessarily stop the owner, a company called B&B Amusements, from moving the ride to another state. And less than a month later, Himalaya 8847 turned up here at the Travis County Livestock Fair and Rodeo in Austin, Texas. Within 10 days of its arrival, 15-year-old Leslie Lane would be dead.
People had been injured on it before. Why it was allowed to keep operating without going through some major overhaul? There's just not enough safety regulations in place.
Not enough? In some cases, there are none at all. In fact, rides in fixed amusement parks like Six Flags or Coney Island are one of the only consumer products in the United States not regulated by the Consumer Product Safety Commission or any other federal agency. The Commission can, and occasionally does, issue safety alerts, as it did after the accident on Himalaya 8847. And carnivals, like the one in Texas where Leslie Lane died, are governed by state laws that vary considerably from state to state. And in 8 states, there are absolutely no mandatory regulation or inspection programs whatsoever. But remember, statistics show that riding in amusement parks is very safe.
We have an extraordinary record of safety for handling that many people.
John Graff is the president and CEO of the International Association of Amusement Parks and Attractions, the trade group for permanent parks.
The chances of a fatality are about 1 in 450 million rides. The chance of being injured seriously enough to go to a hospital about 1 in 25 million.
But do numbers like that tell a complete story? Remember Amy Palomino from El Centro, California. The Consumer Product Safety Commission had no record of that accident, even though traveling carnivals are required by law to report accidents to the CPSC. And since there are no federal rules for reporting accidents in the big permanent parks, George Lane believes the number of people injured at parks and carnivals is much higher than commonly reported.
They can report what they want to, and they don't have to report what they don't want to.
You don't trust their numbers?
No, I don't.
There is no reporting requirement for a permanent park, fun center, or any type of fixed facility.
That's a problem.
Yes, it is. It's a big problem.
Ken Martin has been inspecting rides in amusement parks for decades, and though he believes they are safer than ever, he wonders why the government doesn't keep a closer eye on things.
How is it possible that the Federal Consumer Product Safety Commission doesn't have any authority over these parks? They regulate toys for kids, and yet they won't regulate a giant ride?
Well, Keith, the consumers have not come forward and said, we want the parks regulated. You're right. We regulate car seats, baby cribs, all the important things in our life.
There's no federal standard.
None whatsoever on permanent parks and other fixed facilities.
George Lane believes that's a glaring problem, and he knew he had to do something to give meaning to his daughter's death and his own life. So he continued his mission, helping to create a new law in Texas which forces ride owners to report accident histories. Now he's demanding that the federal government make inspection public and mandatory, and get some kind of law to those states that now require no inspection or reporting of accidents. And now George has an ally in Massachusetts Congressman Ed Markey.
6.5 G-force is greater than an astronaut at NASA would be exposed to. That's how powerful these roller coasters have become.
And even if most of those rides are safe, says Markey, we need some national law to keep them that way. For one thing, he says,
there has to be a way in which states are notified that real dangerous rides are moving towards their states, that their children could be endangered.
This summer in America, millions of us will go higher and faster and pull more G's than we ever have before on amusement park rides. And we'll be much safer on those rides than we'll be in the car driving home. Almost all of us, that is. And George Lane will face another summer thinking about his daughter Leslie.
I mean, there's not a day that goes by that we don't talk about her, think about her. She's there. And will always be there.
Leslie Lane's death has resulted in criminal charges for the first time in the history of the amusement park industry. Arizona-based B&B Amusements, owner of the Himalaya, and the inspection company are planning to plead not guilty to charges of manslaughter. In a letter to Dateline, B&B declined our request for an interview, citing the pending trial, but noted this was the first customer fatality in B&B's 50-year history. The Lane family has settled a civil suit against the two companies. Log on to our website to learn more about the amusement park laws in your state and how to report a safety problem. Our address is dateline.msnbc.com.